spent a number of holes in quick succession because, it's not bad when you get all 4 or 5 inches of snow and you only have to blow it out once. But when you get it like 2/3 of an inch at a time and it's greasy and you can't really scrape it off the road or melt it off, I hate that. This is awful. Why on earth did I move here from it?
It's what we had. We had 5 feet of snow on the end of the sidewalk. It's been that cold. And I need that cold to wake up.
Okay, it's showtime, Merle. You're awake. Sands gave us the thumbs up.
How many of you are from Connor, went to school with Connor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, something like that. How many went on the high? Whoa.
Do we have anybody here from Oak Creek Johnson High School besides me? David, yeah. He was the cool kid who never talked to me. We're friends now, though. Well, yeah, thanks for coming. Oh, Merle is running away so he can see the slideshow, too. Yeah. Okay, well, welcome to our talks. It's 19 February 2026. And yeah, you're welcome. This is a series of pictures. Usually I have some kind of theme that I invent and try to pick out pictures. And I thought, oh, poop, why don't I just pick out a bunch of pictures I like? So I thought I'd do that. And since I'm accumulating pictures, and yes, this is a plea for help, I'm going to be doing on April 21st, Tuesday, April 21st, 10 a.m., History Center, a talk called Positively 3rd Street. It's all going to be all about a hypothetical night, Friday night in 1963 in downtown Winona. And best of all, I'll be operating off of this amazing text written by an amazing Winonan named Al Paffrath. Or Mike, as I call him, in 2005, published in the Daily Shopper. He sent it off to him, and 6 months later, they published it. A paper called 50 Cents in Gas. Don't, check the oil. And it is basically a Friday night in Winona, Minnesota, with kids dragging the gut. Paul? It is April 21st. It is at 10 a.m. It's a Tuesday it's going to be probably in Wannock Hall at the History Center. If you got any pictures, shoot them my way. This is kind of my collection here, but I just wanted to show you some random pictures, and I'll start with this one. It is Gaybrick Park. My mom was born here in 1933, grew up on the East End, and her real religion was baseball. In fact, it was probably baseball, boys, and Catholicism in that order, and this was her happy place. And what I did was I took the black and white picture and dinked with it with Photoshop to get this. And Merle just told me that the straightaway center is 400 feet. Oh. I've never seen anybody hit that, but just one night sitting in those stands, please, Lord. And you can see it's cloudy. It might even rain, which makes it all the much better. And, one of those people there might actually be my mom. You know about Tommy Fix, right? He was a special guy.
Anybody died in sin, Tommy Fix was there. And the families kids them very well. And they did not come from me.
No, as a matter of fact. Yeah, I can testify to that. My mom went to school with a girl named Joanne Fix, her name was that or something else. And my mom just said to us when we were little kids, we were up here visiting Winona. She said, my friend Joanne Fix, her dad got tarred and feathered and rolled down Garvin Heights. All conversation in the car stopped. Dad was a BSer, but Mom was not. I still didn't believe it. Who would tar and feather somebody? I looked it up, and wouldn't you know, as always, it turns out the old girl was exactly right.
And the kids, I've talked to the grandchildren, not of Tommy, but of the parents, and they didn't know about it, the incident occurring, until long after their parents had gotten old. So and it was not that long ago.
No.
40s?
It was the early 40s, and it was basically these guys thought that this guy, Fix, had been messing with somebody else's wife.
That wasn't Tommy. It was Tommy's
dad. Yeah. And
only in Winona.
Yeah, that's it. Only in Winona. Here's another only in Winona. It's a colorized version of Bambanek's store. We would drive into Winona from Milwaukee, and we would come up there, and we would always ask Mom. It was like a ritual. Mom, are they relatives of ours? And Mom would always say, we are related to all the Bambaneks in Winona. And I didn't really think that was true. She was right about that, too.
So this store is still up. It is paperbacks and pieces. And the Bambaneks, like you say, they are all over Dodge and this whole area of Winona. And sometimes the Bambanek family will show up here. And I kind of wish with that picture they had shown up tonight.
The Bambanek family is everywhere. We kind of rule. But I just love this picture so much because it just, like I said, just popped.
Antifreeze, $1.99.
And it's not only antifreeze, Merle. It's permanent antifreeze. It's not the kind of antifreeze that'll just kind of like cut out at you in mid-February. It's permanent. That's what you spend the $1.99 for.
So Theo Bambanek was one of the senior Bambaneks.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. He was the father of Jim Bambanek the First.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, this way. Wilgan's Pure Station, right over there. This is a hallowed corner because the first gas station, this was not the first gas station built here. The first gas station built here was built by, you guessed it, my personal spirit animal, Blanche Hunter. It was Gopher Oil Company back in 1929, operated by C. Blanche Hunter. And eventually it went bankrupt, but she didn't really care anyway because she was much more interested in her Wind Teepee project. This store was built and it was knocked down about 1963 to put in a Clark station. And the Clark station was operated for many years by my dear friend Al Paffrath. And he's got all sorts of stories about the interesting people you meet running a gas station in downtown Winona. Oh, I should also point out that the building at Wright later became the venue, the site of Winona's first head shop, where you could buy marijuana smoking products from either of two respectable individuals, one of whom I had lunch with this afternoon. So, Michael, are you here? No, okay.
Now, in the 50s, was this a candy shop that was attached to the movie theater? It was called Buck's Candy.
Oh, I got Bucky's for you later on. I got Bucky's Hamburger Shop. Okay, so I mean, and this is the steak shop block just because I love this picture so much, because the steak shop restaurant has such a history. There's the cab stand, and oh God,
Yeah.
in the Salvation Army. You know what was with that Salvation Army building? I've colorized it several times, and it always looks so ugly. Oh, that's what I was hoping to hear, Pat. It's not just a computer anomaly; it was just an unusually. Okay. Oops, other way, other way. Third Street, 1953. This is a recent one. Um, these guys are all marching in khaki. You notice they're wearing helmets and stuff like that. And there's that. There's that ugly Salvation Army building again. It's like they gave that building ugly pills. This is the famous Morgan Block 1961 picture where some bunghole called me out for saying, "Oh no, this isn't really in Winona." Fine. That is the Morgan Block, folks. That's the steak shop building in behind. And you'll notice that they are wearing orange and black attire. Yes, folks. Pardon? Winhawks, 1961. This one just knocks I got this one off of an old newspaper. It was just a crappy old newspaper that I thought, what if I just take a picture with my camera and Photoshop it? I got this. The only weirdness is it changed the 1959 Chevy over here into a 1954 Ford. I don't know why the AI did that. But this to me, this is Winona. I've never lived here at its absolute best. This is the time I'd want to come back to. I'd want to be one of those kids hanging out on the street on a summer night in 1963. Here's another newspaper shot, which I like because it's gritty.
That defines Winona, doesn't it? Gritty.
That's it. Yeah. And Winona is still beautiful and amazing with all the grit and gritty people who live here. Look at that. That's a car from 1971. And people were buying cars there at that location for 50 years. And yeah, nobody misses this part of the old Morgan Block. That's the official Morgan Block in the background with Stager's jewelry. 1971. It was taken right before the entire city block was knocked down. One of the photographers from the paper drove around and took shots. Pictures of all this, and this is the only one that worked. But it worked. And City Hall, when it was a baby in 1939.
Whoa.
The city of Winona built this in the middle of the Depression with relief money and sweat equity out of Winona materials, Winona contractors, and they were really very proud that they built this awesome building. This is a shot from Main Street. Main Street, Winona, and look at all the shiny cabs. The Royal Cab Company run by our friends, the Cunningham family, operators of the Harryback.
That AI must have some capability with colors.
Yeah, but it makes the cars all too shiny. I left them here because this is a posed picture of a cab business. Of course, he's probably waxed the dang cabs. But
yeah, they were all yellow.
These were all yellow?
Yeah, they should have been yellow.
I'm going to cry and take all my stuff and go sit in the corner. Thank you for saving me from myself. They'll all be yellow next time you see them. Great. Okay, what color was this? One thing that I have learned, though, all the flack this building got, especially in the 1960s when people were ready for it to go, I got to say, it was terribly beat up. All the pictures I see of it, it looks dirty. and beaten down as if they hadn't taken care of it, and they let pigeons fly around. Okay, next, yes.
Go back one, Joe.
Sure.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't. That way?
Oh yeah, that's way out on the west end.
Good view. Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about there. And yeah, that's not really a gorgeous building either. But this one was one of the very first Highway 61 type motels that took all the business out of downtown.
And the Happy Chef, which was 24 hours a day, which meant and you had people in early for breakfast, and you had late night boys closing it down at 3, 4 in the morning. It was a special place, and it contributed to downtown Winona's decline.
Yeah, none of this stuff was there in 1955. It was all here by about 1965, and that's when downtown started to go down the tubes, but it happened everywhere else in America that they built a highway past a city. I mean, if you can, you can build a highway in the city. Here is another shot I like because you're standing on, I guess, Johnson Street. You're looking down towards the river, and you can actually see the river. There's no levee. I'm not dogging the levee. I'm glad Winona has a levee. I'm glad we have a good levee. When I was a kid, I was obsessed with the Winona floods, as I called them. But there was a time when you could walk down Johnson Street and you saw the river. You didn't just read about it coming up or going down. You saw it. And I wish I'd lived here then. And over there, later on became the A&P, later on became the co-op.
And the NSP building is where Fastenal started, right? They were down there in one of their first buildings.
And that was originally, I believe, the car barn for the Winona streetcar system.
Was it?
Yep.
Oh.
And they had a special track that went down Johnson Street. Figured that out in the last couple of years. Now watch, I'm wrong about that too. And here's Buc-ee's. I remember being a little kid coming up here and seeing Sandy's, and that used to be Sandy's, and I just thought that was the coolest. It looked at least 5 times as cool as any, right, Judy? Looked 5 times as cool as any McDonald's. And I still can't get over the fact that somebody built a fast food store there. Well, yeah, I know, but you don't see them popping up right next to college campuses. I just thought, and now there's no sign of it, but I just thought, man, we lose something when we forget about places like Buc-ee's. And that's where I'm going to leave it for right now, because my next talk is going to be about Indian Larry himself, the famous Leon Ambrose Bronk. But it's time to toss the pass off to Merle.
It's so nice you're here. We had that 50-degree weather last week. I had to get out in it. I got out walking. I got out traipsing. I could splash in some puddles. I could feel young again. I'm 67 years old. And I'm out walking around, and of course, I don't necessarily see today. I see yesterday as I'm walking. And I go by houses in different places. And there's a story in every house in Winona, from the little houses to the big houses. And sometimes the big houses have tragedies that hit them, just like they do the small houses. Tragedies don't care if you're rich or if you're poor. It's going to hit you all the same. So I was out walking, and I was out walking in that West 4th Street neighborhood down there by Firebright. And I came across a Mikuleski who went to St. Casmer's. Now, when you get old, your seeing sometimes gets out of whack. So bear with me. Ed Mikuleski, he said. The sun poured through the windows facing the lake and the bluffs as I sat watching my day pass. The bar was filled with people sharing their days, and old grizzled vets stood tall remembering their fallen comrades. There was a fresh falling of snow outside, and the sun flowed from the heavens. I died at the Battle of St. Louis, July 17, 1944. Funny named place to take your last breath. Company K, 29th Infantry. I was a replacement for men who lost their lives on Omaha Beach. Less than a month earlier, many of the boys who served had died at Normandy. You don't find men like them every day. I took a sip of my beer, a privileged beer, I thought. Privileged to live in this country, privileged to write the words that I do, privileged to raise a family and see children and grandchildren grow up. Ed didn't get to see what we take for granted as artillery and bombs fell on his head. He was still talking. I grew up in the West End, 4th Street, not far from St. Casmer's. Couple of sisters and a little brother, Bob. Didn't have much of anything but a basket full of good memories. I carry those memories with me today. I didn't graduate from high school, drove a Federal Bakery bread truck, loved the smell of fresh bread. Married Evelyn Zimmerman, had a son, Gerald Edward. Little Ed, I called him. He is gone, as is Evelyn. She remarried, and I was happy for her and the little Ed. Rogerby was a good man. I'm buried out there in St. Mary's Cemetery. Come out and visit someday. Bring your lawn chair, crack open a beer, and let's talk. It gets lonely out here in the lands of the old town. Time swirls as I sip my whiskey, thinking of Ed and countless others who made it back home, no longer breathing. So, like I said, I never know who I'm going to run into when I'm out walking. I never met this guy before. I didn't have a clue. But yet he's there. He's out in the neighborhood. Now, of course, I got seeing problems. I see things that ain't real, that ain't there. You think. But for me, it's just a different life. It's just a different space. It's just a different trip. So I was walking, and I was thinking about all the famous lawyers that used to be in Winona. And I think back to Winona's early days. And there was Bill Wyndham. My gosh, he was Secretary of the United States Treasury twice. He signed $2 bills. He had his picture on a $2 bill. Little bitty town of Winona. He got nominated for president. He got 10 votes in the election that elected James Garfield in the nomination process. Bill Wyndham, the great-grandson who starred on Star Trek. And he worked with Angela Lansbury in Murder, She Wrote. That was the doctor. We were all, part of Winona's heritage, part of who we are. So of course, on there about the 500 block of West Fifth Street, it's a gray house now, freshly painted. It's the house of James Tawney. Now, most of us probably never really heard of James Tawney unless we got some obsessive disease, which kind of takes us and makes us dig in archives and libraries to see what's really like.
What's so weird about that?
I don't think there's anything weird. I'm thankful.
Stop that.
I'm thankful we got that disease.
Yeah. I wish
God.
more people had.
And so I came across James Tawney. No, I said, who is this character? Because they didn't teach us that at Cotter. They teach us that at Cotter. Winona High, Arcadia High School. He was the first majority whip in the U.S. Congress. He was a powerful man from little bitty Winona, Minnesota. He became Speaker of the House. Winona, Minnesota. That shows how far lumber money went. Now, these guys got paid $5,000 a year way back in the day. And he was a powerful man because he was also on the Appropriations Committee, as was Bill Windham when he wasn't Secretary of the Treasury.
Wasn't he also a blacksmith by trade?
Oh, he was, yeah. Oh, Tawny was a blacksmith and a machinist. And then he came here and went to law school by reading Nights.
He was just a schmuck. He was just like your basic bub from Winona.
Yeah, but you know what? He could talk. And he was forceful and he was strong. Because back in the days, sometimes you had to stop Polish Kashubian folks down there in the East End. You best be strong. You best be forceful. Because if there's one thing about Winona, is we all got opinions.
Me? I don't have any opinions about it.
You don't have an opinion?
No. I'm all better now.
Okay, then I got to tell you another story about a lawyer. 1932, we had a bonus army that was camped out on the front lawn of the White House. Herbert Hoover was president, and the Winona man was the Attorney General. His name was William DeWalt Mitchell. And his parents lived on the corner of 6th and Huff, that kind of light yellow brick house. I think Fuchsia's might have lived in it at one time. Right? Yeah. Okay. It was directly across the street from the Garvins or the Krugers nowadays, the White House. Directly across the street is where Mitchells live. And these soldiers were camped out on the front lawn. Now, I wasn't there, but it's estimated 10 to 25,000 former troops were there, built tents and shanties. It was a depression, and times were really, really tough. And Hoover, he just irritated the men because he would have those 7-course meals. He'd be dressed, and he had that big belly, and he did all that kind of stuff. And he would go out, and he'd drive by just to look at them. And the men seethed. They were mad. They were angry. Soldiers don't like handouts. None of them I've ever found. Well, these boys were no exceptions. But they had no choice. There were no jobs. And the United States government had promised them a bonus payable in 1945. Well, it's 1932. And they were hungry. Their families were hungry. Their kids were hungry. They had to stand up. Well, Hoover told young Mitchell, not so young at the time, to get him off the front lawn. So they sent the best and the brightest. They sent Patton, they sent Eisenhower, and they sent MacArthur. You don't hear about this side of the military. And they told them to clear the front lawn. And they did. A number of them died, I believe. It was a tragedy. And that story is what we want to get kids thinking and learning about history. It's stories like that got to be told. They're painful. Mr. Mitchell, the young Mr. Mitchell, ended up heading out to Pearl Harbor Commission, and he died in New York. He spent most of his life out east. But the first few years of his life, he was educated, and he was educated at Phelps, because that was the school. Winona High School was just an imagination. It was a holding tank for the kids, the big families, and all that kind of stuff. They shoved them to school. We come from poor roots, poor people. It's part of who we are, a myth. And William Mitchell, the senior, was a lawyer's lawyer. He wrote much of the laws of the state of Minnesota, and the federal government consulted with him about the legal system. He was from Canada, and he came here. He came to Winona in like 1850-something, early on, and he was here. And he wrote laws, big-time laws. And he partnered with a guy named Yale, who was part of the Yale Lock Company out east that's still going. They probably aren't out east anymore, and they probably changed their name. And Yale University. Winona was knee-deep in lawyers and historians and good lawyers. We didn't come from dumb people. We might have gotten in trouble, but we didn't. We got some smarts and we got a lot of towning. So sometimes they kind of fight, you know.
Okay, thank you very much, Merle. And it's important to know that history is alive here in Winona. It is not just names and dates and facts and stuff like that. You can come down here any Thursday at 4 p.m., any third Thursday at 4 p.m., hear a couple of old coots who just want to tell you about what it was like to be alive back then. That's all. You don't have to pass a test. You don't have to do an interpretive dance. You don't have to go visit the Bunnell House. You can just sit down and listen to me tell you my second straight story of a rapscallion and scalawag who somehow managed to achieve good despite it all. Last time it was A.J. Kovalevsky and his brother John. And today I've got for you Indian Larry Bronk. Have any of you ever been to the Leon A. Bronk Forest Management Unit? I see some. Yeah, I do, you too. But anyway, this guy. But here's the intro I wrote for it last night. It's only a paragraph long. A couple of generations ago, Winona was home to a well-respected public servant named Postmaster Leon Bronk. Leon Ludwig Bronk was born here in 1890, and he ran a cement culvert business How amazing is that? But his political acumen marked him out for bigger things. He was past president of the athletic club. He was past president of the American Legion. Oh, what the heck else was he? He was a big wheel in Democrat politics here in Winona. So much so that in 1935, a Democratic National Committeeman for the state of Minnesota made an announcement, basically, your next postmaster here in Winona is going to be Leon L. Bronk. Came from the Democratic National Convention. You see what his qualifications were. He did have a long, healthy term as the postmaster of Winona. He must have been a dear friend of my grandfather, John C. Bambanek, who was the county treasurer from 1921 to 1947. Grandpa was a fire-breathing Republican. They must have had some really fun conversations over drinks at the athletic club. I'm sure Leon L. Bronk was a great guy, but that's not who I'm talking about today. I'm going to be talking about a larger-than-life character with nearly the same name. They were both named Leon Bronk, and they were like fifth cousins, which doesn't even count in Poland. Leon Ambrose Bronk was not what you would call all that respectable. With that, a disclaimer is in order. If I mention anything in the least disreputable about Leon Ambrose Bronk, who is known to his grandchildren as Indian Larry, it's something I heard from a member of the Bronk tribe, many of whom I met at Peter's Beer Garden one Thursday evening in summer 2023, and you guys were there. It was hilarious. It was just a spectacular time. We basically sat out there at the beer garden and celebrated all these weirdos who came over from Poland to make Winona great and weird. And I heard it all from them. And I'm going to call him Larry, too, because Tony said his grandpa made him call him Indian Larry. Okay, Indian Larry was born in Winona in 1878. He lived to be 99. He was the son of Ignatius Bronk and his second wife, Veronica. And he liked to talk about himself to Winona's newspaper reporters. Thank God. One of his earliest memories was from 1885, his mother's wake in the front room of their little house way out on East Sanborn Street. He remembered that his mother dear was on ice because it was hot, and the water dripped down into a pan on the floor. Why the hell did he share that memory? He was a motherless child at age 7. His father did not remarry and took the whole 6 kids and lived on a farm in Buffalo County. His older sister, Katie, tried her best to take care of these kids, but Indian Larry went wild. When he was about 9, 10, 11 years old, he basically lived with the Ho-Chunk people, the Winnebago, off behind Tripolo Mountain. He learned their ways, he learned to hunt and fish, he learned to grow, and I would imagine they said, yeah, we like you just fine, son, but you're going to have a whole lot easier life living as a white man in this world. And he did. So here is what Indian Larry did. About 20 years old, he bought a farm in Hillsdale Township, which is just out back of Lake Goodview, right? That's where we went that one time. We went on a field trip out there to investigate Indian Larry.
They took that. It's gone. They had, remember on the front farm, the front house, they had a what? Totem pole.
The totem pole. They took down a lot of the stuff. Apparently, it was planned.
Oh, that's
I know. I know. It's um. Anyway, he settled there about 1900, and he became the constable for Minnesota City. And occasionally, he had to take criminals up to probably St. Paul to be handled properly. I'll get back to that later on. He also married a young woman by the name of Josephine Verdick. They were blessed with 6 children, and the youngest one, James, eventually became a Roman Catholic priest. That's neither here. Larry was a devout Catholic. He was also what you would call a truck farmer is the term for, I don't know what you call them, market farmer. They grew produce, all sorts of produce, and carted it into town to sell it to grocers or to the wholesalers. It was backbreaking. It was not agribusiness. You basically grew cabbages and radishes and turnips. It wasn't sexy or anything that. There was enough work for everybody. So basically, he was just a farmer, right? Well, this guy left a mark on Minnesota City. Just a farmer, old Pollock from Winona. He was the instrumental in founding the Minnesota City Boat Club because he loved to fish. He loved to hunt. He loved to grow things. You'd always read about him in the paper. Leon Blanc has grown a 40-pound catfish. Or, well, you know what I'm getting at. Okay. He founded the Minnesota City Boat Club, and he was also the guiding force. I still don't know how this was done, behind the founding of St. Paul's Roman Catholic Parish in Minnesota City. It's merged into St. Mary's now. But, nobody really thought Minnesota City really needed a Roman Catholic parish except for Indian Larry, and they got one. But this is the main takeaway of I see what time it is here. Okay. His greatest achievement really is right up here. In the 1970s, I believe, Leon Bronk, Indian Larry, while he was still alive, donated his 770-acre farm to the state of Minnesota. He still got to live there as long as he wanted to, but he only farmed about 200 acres of the farm. The rest of it, I'm guessing, would be up on, the rest of the land is up on the ridge. It's forest. He just owned it because he wanted to own it. But he gave it to the state of Minnesota, and it is part of the wonderful and huge Richard J. Dorer Memorial Forest, which we've all wandered through, we've all driven by, we've all enjoyed. This is a Pollock who left his name on a part of Winona. That's a really big deal. And, well, it says here, okay, blah, blah, blah. The family's outbuildings were gradually removed, but you can still see Indian Larry's big house out back of the lake. For all of that, however, Indian Larry Blanc was just a fascinating human being. The kind of historical characters this city of Winona, Minnesota just seems to throw up there. If only we could get interested in them. In his early law enforcement days, he knew every brothel in the Twin Cities from personal experience. Tony told me that. Tony had to sleep with him when he was a kid. He didn't want to sleep with his grandpa because he was 8 years old, for God's sake. And that's where I got the story about the brandy bottles under the bed. And he insisted that Tony address him as Indian Larry. I like that. I probably heard a few more stories that night, but now it wasn't just about Indian Larry. It was more about the entire Bronk family, which is still here in Winona after going 2 centuries. My kind of people. Thank you very much.
I had a couple Broncs in my graduating class way back in 1976. So they're still all over the town. And we had one die just a few weeks ago. It was the first police officer's funeral I've ever been to. It was really kind of cool. I mean, I'm an outsider, right? I don't dress like a cop. I don't comb my hair like a cop. I don't have facial hair like a cop. And I could never be a cop.
I believe that.
I mean, by the time I came around to making a decision, I'd have to think and think, and it just wouldn't work. I couldn't do it. But I went there. Oh, Jim and Joe, yeah, your time.
I mean, King Grove, no. Charles Grove was at top here in the 1880s.
Yeah, that was probably a relative. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Oh, so what's it? Oh, anyway, I like going out for walks, you know. And I was over there by the old Fugelstedt block on is that West Sanborn? Not too far from Winona State, just a couple blocks west. And it was that minister, Show, who died a few years back, had a daughter who got run over. Yeah. And he told me one day I was out walking. This old guy told me one day there was an apple orchard when this neighborhood started on the corner down by Fugelstedt's house. And everybody knows Fugelstedt's. They were Winona's live wire. They had a lot of special juice running through them. At least any of them I've ever met. But it was on that West East. Then back in 1900, I found myself. Winona held what was called a GAR convention, which was
The Grand Army of the
Republic of 1861. All right, 1861. The Civil War veterans all gathered from all across the country, Unions and Confederates, and they came back to talk about the good old days. And if you know any old timers, you know they pounded a few beers or a few drinks. And you saw them in the picture I've seen of this. And they were on the rooftops. Some were just hanging out on the rooftops. And you could just see the old boys. I mean, can you imagine living through that war? Oh my gosh. I mean, if there's anybody who deserves to come back from war, not quite right, it's those brothers who fought in the Civil War. Because they saw cousins, and they saw brothers and they saw. It affected everyone in this town. You couldn't escape that war. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have any of that stuff. Everywhere you go, you saw war. You wondered about kids, what it was like. And that's when James Tawney was born. He was born just outside of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania in 1855. So you start to walk around town. You start to see these old things of yesterday. And you walk a little further and you find out that everything is connected. And Winona was so tight-knit. You knew what was going on. You heard about hardship. You heard about good times. You heard about families. So I was out walking on Fugelstedt block as I get back to making sense. And I come across, let me see, a story I called Great Grandpa John. I had no more taken 2 steps into the cemetery when Great Grandpa John and Grandma Lucy showed up. This was my first time meeting Grandma, as I've lost touch with some family folks. She was right special because Grandpa had some juice in him. We got buried down by the creek closer. I used to say it might save us a few years getting to our final destination. Been headed downhill forever. Family roots. My great great grandpa got me started with my story of writing. Of course, he died in 1920, and I'm old, but not that old. His own little world. He'd get to talking, and I get to listening. He liked meaning with my thinking. He liked messing with my thinking. I had a beautiful wife, he told me. I moved here after the Civil War. I wore my uniform proud till my dying day. I lost my leg. The Pennsylvania courthouse. I'd seen and heard Gettysburg, smelled it from a ways away. Fourth Vermont, just a day's ride outside of Gettysburg. We were the next line of defense should Lee have broken through at Cemetery Ridge. Never saw so many buzzards flying and the smell over those next few days. But hearing a man scream as they sawed off his leg with only whiskey to stop the pain will break most any man. So I carried my half-dead leg with me until 1900. In 1900, my leg had started giving out. Had to chop it off. Green, you know. I forgot the doctor's name. He had an office on Second Street, where the Second Street wasn't quite so smooth. He gave me a couple shots of something blue. Second floor, way in the back. Anyway, one of my proudest moments was when the Grand Army of the Republic met here in 1900. It was a gathering of men who shared a Civil War experience. To a man, we hoped it would be the last war. It wasn't 2 weeks after my leg got cut off that the meeting started, and some of my drinking buddies got a Winona wagon, works wagon, and picked me up, bed and all. Plopped me right down, 407 West Sanborn, and I drank myself senseless. I'm surprised nobody died as we remembered the stories. Sadness and fun, all in the same day. Company K of the 1st Minnesota is revered in northern circles, and old war historians from the South marveled at the courage of that outfit that turned Lee back south. Cemetery Ridge. I know none of us were ever the same after that conflict. Walk gently now. A whole lot of folks want to tell their stories. Well, like I said, there were a bunch of drunks on these rooftops. So of course they wanted to tell them. They thought history had forgotten about them. The story was called Charlie Bear. That was a real name. Charlie Bear. Another soldier from the Grand Army took up the story. It was good to see all the boys. Hadn't seen many of them since my death. My name is Charlie Bear. I was a Winona boy, lived at 95 West Broadway. That shack I once lived in, long gone. 7,000 or so Americans died at Gettysburg. I was one of them. Went down on the 3rd. It was a hot July in Pennsylvania. Rotting, dying flesh carries a smell as of bloated horses and gun smoke. I lay there in the fields of Gettysburg, slowly bleeding. Died on the 4th. Charlie and his buddies tell me it was quite a party. The Grand Old Army of the Republic held its national convention in Winona. The country came to celebrate those who lived and those that didn't make it back. I wasn't able to make it by conventional means, mind you. I had to take the Spirit Highway, Charlie chuckled. Got shot twice. Crazy enough to come charging down the Cemetery Ridge I was. Boom, boom, stomach and shoulder. Those old muskets were not so accurate. To get hit twice like I did was pure bad luck. I stood listening to all the voices in the front yard of 407 West Sanborn. Those boys tell me they partied into the wee hours of the night at this house when the predecessor of the American Legion held their national convention. A beer pong table graces the lawn today, but on the day I met Charlie Bear, blue coats were drinking off the roof, laughing carried on, and shedding tears they remembered the world they left behind. Charlie grinned. I was proud. I still am. We turned the tides of war and gave meaning to the United States of America. Even at our advanced ages, we could put down a few drinks in the stories. Well, you should have heard the stories. They just get better with time. I saluted as he left me. That's all I got. Now, next Thursday, I am at the Sportsman's Tap for you folks who grew up in the 50s, Ed's No Name Bar. It's Wednesday? Oh, I need a manager really bad. Well, sometimes you don't want to burden the poor girl. So next Wednesday at, oh God, I'm still working on it. Like 7 o'clock, yeah. I'm there. And then you know what the funniest, some of the best times Joe and I have is talking to the people at Callista Court at St. Anne's Hospice. Oh my gosh. Oh, they're making us better. Because we got to get it right or they're going to straighten us out because they know time's catching up to them just like they are great. They are an absolutely fun place to be around and to talk and to hear their stories. So, questions?
Chuck Norris jokes.
No.
Norris doesn't sleep. He waits. Yes, Bill.
So come on down 7:30 next Wednesday. It's at Ed's No Name Bar at the corner of 3rd and Franklin. And I think I'm going to try and do schizophrenia as good as I can.